Hello, welcome along to Writer's Routine. Thank you so much for being there. This week, we're with Adam Skolnick, fantastic writer, journalist, podcaster, and he's got a new novel out. It's called American Tiger. You can hear all about his efforts to desacredize the space and the day. Also, we talk about the big problem of, well, after being a journalist for so long, figuring out if he was up to writing a novel.
The difficulty for me was kind of a bit of imposter syndrome, was like for the first, I'd say 3 drafts of this novel, maybe more, I was like, this sucks. Like, I can't do this. I'm failing at this. And I kept trying and I kept trying to find it and find the story. And it took probably 10 drafts before I showed anybody even a word of this book. And that's how long it took for me to get comfortable with, okay, I might have something here.
And then the flip side of that, how, as a novelist, you can just make stuff up.
This thing took place in a town called Simi Valley. And I'm like, I don't know Simi Valley enough. Should I actually go and work there? Should I set up shop there 5 days a week? I don't know this place well. And then what happened for me was I realized it doesn't have to be Simi Valley. This is fiction. You can unplug from Simi Valley. You can create a fake Simi Valley. So I created a place called Alissaw Valley that's loosely based on Simi Valley. And once I did that and fully with 2 feet leapt into this fictional world, this fictional place, it opened up for me. Everything opened up.
It's all on the way with a brand new Writer's Routine this week with Adam Skolnick. Yes, welcome along to the show. My name's Dan Simpson. This is Writer's Routine, where we take a look inside an author's working day. We figure out what they do, where they do it, how they plan their day to give themselves the best chance of getting words on the page. And that's what it's all about. This week we're with Adam Skolnick. Adam has worked as a journalist for the New York Times, the BBC, for ESPN, for Lonely Planet, and has really found his niche in travel writing and also covering endurance sports. He was the ghostwriter for David Goggins' best-selling memoirs, Can't Hurt Me and Never Finished. You might have heard of David Goggins. He's the retired Navy SEAL who has become an ultra-endurance legend, both incredibly inspiring and incredibly terrifying with that inspiration, I really think, at the same time. It's a tricky balance, but David normally manages it. He's also published One Breath, all about the world of free diving, which was turned into a Netflix documentary. Also, it frequently pops up on the Rich Roll podcast. That's where I first came across Adam's work. I'm a big fan of that show. I think Rich and Adam really delicately tread the line of being inspirational and trying to make your life better, whilst not absolutely ramming it down your throat that you're really lazy. They deal with that vibe really well. Anyway, Adam has a new novel out. It's called American Tiger. It's all about Bell Tern, who, when on her school bus, spots a tiger licking its paws in Los Angeles. It's a story rooted in the stunning Southern Californian landscape, and it's stocked with really vivid characters. We talk about how the idea came to him during a free diving competition. Also, you can hear about the different passes that he does for each individual character, focusing on just improving them. And we discuss his new process, which involves cue cards. Now, if you enjoy the show, if you pick up any tip which helps your day out, you can support us on our Patreon and Ko-Fi page. The links are in the episode notes or wherever you're listening. And let's dive right into it with Adam Skolnick, and we start, as we always do, with what he sees around him in the place where he sits down to write.
I write in a very cave-like office desk, and my books are all around me. So I've got big shelves, two big bookshelves and a third one to my left. So I've got like bookshelves around, and I've got kind of handicrafts and art from my travels. And I've got, some windows with shutters that sometimes are open, but usually it's just really kind of a back wall, like the side between our house and the next door neighbor. So you get some greenery, but not a whole lot of light. So it's kind of cave-like in there. And whatever kind of state my desk is in, I'm one of those people, like, Barack Obama in his book talked about how he writes in a hole. Michelle Obama calls it his hole. I kind of have the same problem where I just leave piles of papers because I want to know where things are. And of course that inevitably means I don't know where things are, but it is kind of does happen, especially when I'm deep into a project. Piles just develop around me.
Is there ever any attempt to make it a bit less holy, tidy everything up and have some structure?
Yes, like when I feel like I'm stuck writing, that it's like, I'm like, okay, it's because of the energy that I've got around me, and I've got to clear it all out and kind of sort through it, and then the piles come back. So it's like this. I've been fighting this battle a long time.
So you've got the piles, you've got like a few trinkets on the desk, whatever it is. What is maybe around you that's pertinent to whatever it is you're working on? I'm talking any form of plans, spreadsheets, post-it notes.
Yeah. So I always work from an outline. I typically start a project in Scrivener, and I'll do an outline, and then I'll do like everything in Scrivener. So starting with the outline. I've got a new project that I'm starting on now, a new nonfiction book project. And for the first time, I'm going to note cards because actually, my friend Elizabeth Gilbert has always sworn by the kind of the Nabokov system of using note cards. And then some other writers I've talked to, and I'm like, maybe I'll try that for this particular project. It seemed to suit this one. So now I have note cards around me, a stack of note cards for this project. But typically it's all digital. Like I used to do everything in notebooks, and now it's almost all in my notes app. Occasionally I'll go to a notebook, but usually it's notes app. And then any reading material that is relevant to the project will be around me too.
I feel like writers and other creatives, they're always willing to take on new ideas, but then very keen to return to the default, to kind of reset to how it's always been. So this new method, you're doing it with cue cards, note cards. How long are you willing to push through if it's not quite working?
I think I'm going to do it. So basically all I'm doing with the note cards is the different people that I want to talk to for this book project. It's about wingsuit base jumping. And so it's kind of a deep dive into that world. So it's kind of like the next, and it's not really a planned series or anything, but I did a book on freediving that came out in 2016. And so it's a similar kind of theme. Obviously, instead of going underwater, they're flying. And so, there's a bunch of people I want to talk to that are connected to this particular story within this world. And they live in different parts of the world or the country. And so I just wanted to put them all out on cards so I can kind of see where they all fit and move them around. And so for this one, it felt like it made sense to do it versus just doing it on the page, because it's just, you can move them around in front of you. And so I think this one is going to stick. And I don't know if I'm going to add more to this kind of note card pile, if I'm going to actually write more notes per person that's on there, or if I'm just going to keep it the way it is and just add to the stack. We'll see. But I think it's helped me kind of set up how I'm going to run the research part of this project. And so that's what it was for. And I think I'll keep it that way.
We'll come to the day in just a second, but in terms of your space, how much thought is there behind how it is and how it helps you work best? Because this is a subject and a theme that I'll touch on a bit later. But I think kind of the spheres that you run in are part of the vibe is like trying to be the best that we can be, you know? How does that translate to the thought behind where it is that you work?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, like I'm renting my parents' house. So the house I grew up in from age 7 to 17, I lived there, and we're renting that house. My family now lives there. And so my office just happens to be my childhood bedroom. So that's kind of weird. I just want to put that out there as this kind of like interesting side note to my space. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Adam. How much discussion was there with, I guess, the family or whoever it is that you might be renting the house where you used to live in?
I mean, it was their idea. So I was the last to get on board. So what happened was, it was the pandemic. We were living, my wife and I have a son, Zuma, and Zuma was just born. He was born in August of 2020. And so we were starting to look for a house. We had a 2-bedroom apartment, not far from where we live now. And we were looking, okay, we're time to get a house, but it was kind of crazy. It was in that pandemic time here in California. real estate went nuts. I think a lot of places it did. And so it was kind of hard to find something, and I put some offers in. And quite frankly, I'm a career renter, and buying property scares the hell out of me. And so I didn't ever like really put all my chips on the table. I was always kind of like making an offer, but nothing was happening. And so then my folks had not lived in this house for years, and they had renters in it, and the renters just abruptly left. And so they offered it to us, and my wife really wanted to do it. And I was the last to come on board. But then my wife wanted to live there. So I'm like, oh, who am I to stop them? And by then, when my parents last lived there, my childhood bedroom had long been converted into my dad's office. And so it just kind of was the office space. And so it wasn't like a ton of thought. Your question of how much thought is there wasn't a ton of thought. That was the office. And so that was going to stay the office. And so that's where I kind of set up shop. And so it was kind of almost like this weird tractor beam that pulled me in there. And now being in the house, it didn't take long for it to feel like home, and not necessarily the home I grew up in, because lots have changed. But it is both, right? It's kind of a little bit now and a little bit then. And so it's kind of this weird place where I used to dream as a kid, and now I'm kind of dreaming up stuff as a grown up. And in terms of the space, it's like I have a stand-up desk. And so that was to give myself a couple different levels. And that has turned out to be really, really helpful, because it's nice to sometimes be able to stand and work instead of sit down the whole day. And then I have 2 screens. That is something that's intentional. Other than that, I can't say I'm the type of person that is sacred about my workspace. I used to be more so. And when I first started out writing, I had like a candle, and I had to have the right thing on my desk and all that. And then as I kind of became more professional and just more more successful, quite frankly, that meant I had to learn to write anywhere at any time, whether it was like in an airport, in the back of a cab, off the side of the road, and wherever it is, I had to produce and file stories. And so that enabled me to kind of desacredize this practice of writing and be able to write anywhere and work anywhere. And that is what has helped me become just, I don't want to say the word prolific, because I'm not the most prolific, but it has definitely produced, an uptick in my productivity for sure.
That word desacredize is
a terrible word.
No, I like it, and it's quite spot on, because I think that's something that many authors struggle with, and it's a thing that we will chat about, is like having the moment where you sit down to write, and maybe there are things that you need to do, like you need to write a candle, you need to make sure you're using your favorite pen, whatever it might be, whereas you're snatching time, getting words down wherever you might be. That training process of making sure that you do it, how simple was that for you? And is there still anything that you do need to do, no matter where you are, to kind of flick into that kind of creative zone?
Yeah, de-ritualize might be the better word for it. So when I first started, it was a ritual to me. It was definitely sacred. And I think that spoke to how important it was to me to make a go of this and make this thing work, and feeling like I needed like the support of the universe or the gods on my side, because it's so daunting. I mean, remember, like Thoreau lived in Emerson's guest house. So this is not the type of profession that is easy to break into. And so that was top of mind. But then as I started to work, what I realized is, for me, the ritual was getting in the way, and it felt like too heavy. And what changed for me was I started working with Lonely Planet. And when I started to take these Lonely Planet jobs, I had to produce so many more words for a given assignment in a short time than I was used to. Like, if I was lucky, I would get a 3,000 word feature story and have 6 weeks to do it. I mean, that's easy, right? Like, that's not that hard to create that. But at that time, before I started working with Lonely Planet, I would take all that time because I didn't know how to produce words faster. When I started doing these Lonely Planet jobs, and I have to turn in 30, 40, 50,000 words after researching on the ground for 4 to 6 weeks, and I had 4 to 6 weeks to do this kind of thing, I realized I had to write, what happened was a guy named Ian Stewart, who was the first Lonely Planet author that I kind of worked under for my first gig, said, look, mate, this is the deal. You have to write 3,000 words a day and you'll make deadline. Cause I was like behind, I was a little worried. And that number was so large that it freaked me out. But that was my goal. And so once I started to do that and I did make deadline, that's when I changed from the ritual to words per day. And it became like laying bricks. And so it became much more, which is kind of like the Zen sacred, chop wood, carry water. It's not like that's not any more sacred than having a big ritual. It's just that you don't take it so serious. You just take it as something you have to do one step in front of the other. And that mindset has kind of relieved me of all that pressure. And frankly, I think having less pressure and less stuff kind of built up around it in your head makes it freer also, a much freer process. I'm the morning guy at home, so I make breakfast, I hang out with Zuma. Zuma goes off to school, and then I'll sit down and do a morning session. And so that would be if it's a new chapter, and then it would be something that I have an outline for, and I'll start doing that. And like I said, my goal still to this day is to write a certain number of words every day. And so that number during the novel was more like 2,000, 2,500 words a day. And so I usually would get, close to 1,000 words before I break for lunch and maybe some exercise. And then come back and do an afternoon session. And if I didn't have the exercise yet, I'll do it. I'll get that in after that afternoon session. And so that's kind of how it went. Just rhythmic like that. And it's always working at home. On this last book, it was always working at home. It was always working from an outline and kind of like going. And then within the outline, though, I just want to point out that there's so much room to improv and just kind of riff off of that outline. And so sometimes during the course of a day, I might like struggle for the first half of it and get 500 words in, and then the last hour get, 1,500, 2,000 words down. So there's no real rhythm as to how well it works. Sometimes I'm like surfing the internet when I'm supposed to be writing. I'm at the desk is the point. Be at the desk, stay at the desk. And so that it usually breaks down that way. 2 sessions around a meal and some exercise mixed in.
Yeah, that's full on. Those ideally 2,500 words. How perfect do they need to be first time round?
Not at all. Don't have to be perfect. They just have to come out. And so, I think I do. It's not that I don't go back and read a paragraph, but I try not to. So what I try to do is do a full day's work, just keep flowing. And then the beginning of the next day, I'll go back through and reread and kind of and make some edits and then get into the new day. So that's kind of how it works. I neglected to say that. So I try not to judge the new material. And it's funny how material works. I'm sure you found this. Is like some days you'll be fighting it. Maybe you'll only get 1,000 words done or 1,500 words, and you think they suck because it was so hard. And then another day you might flow and it's like 3,000 words. They came out so easy. The funny thing is sometimes the freer words are the pages are worse than the ones that you had to fight through. So I don't find, and sometimes vice versa. I don't find any rhyme or reason to how it feels to how it reads.
When the words are out, when you're done for the day, it's now family time, I guess. It's you, it's your wife, it's Zuma. Like how, because 2,500 words is a lot, so that must be quite all consuming. How good are you at detaching yourself from whatever it is and being in the moment of family?
That's, it's not always easy. Like I find that just no matter how many words you produce during the day, when you're in the middle of a book project, it's constantly in your head. So an idea is going to pop up, especially on a walk or a run. Even when you're playing with Zuma, even in the middle of the night. So I try to have a notebook or my notes app open somewhere close by. So if an idea happens, I can just jot it down and get it out of my head so I can remain present. I find if I try to hold, like the ideas are going to come, especially when you're in the middle of something. Like I find it like at the beginning, it's not really haunting you yet. Then it really haunts you. And then once you get to the other side and it's all about revisions, you might have an idea here or there, but it's not haunting you in the same way. But when you're in that haunting zone, you got to get it out onto in some form or fashion, so it just gets out of your head and you can be present, because it is a challenge. It absolutely is a challenge. And I wouldn't say I'm great at it, to be honest with you.
I know that a lot of people listening will probably hear that the kind of the word ambition every day and be a bit daunted by how huge that precipice seems to be. Now, you've worked on that because you had to do it. You trained to do it as you were writing and traveling for Lonely Planet. So how, at what point did writing that much become more attainable? So, like, first off, you're trying to write, I guess, 1,000 words a day, and then a bit more and a bit more. There must have been a moment where it clicked and you thought, oh, okay, I'm kind of getting the hang of this. Like, when was your brain trained for that?
Yeah, training is a great word for it. So for me, and you kind of have to get in shape for it with each project. So for me, writing ever since those Lonely Planet days, and really because I was a journalist first before writing books, I was just, in journalism, you're in the field, you're doing your research, then you go and you do your writing. And it's always been that way for me, and it remains that way. There's the research phase and the writing phase. And so with Lonely Planet, when I heard that, I went back and I obviously got to work, and it took a while. Like first it was 1,500 words, like you say, then it was like 1,700 words. Now with Lonely Planet assignments, sometimes you're saving old entries that you're just updating a few little things. And so it's not like you have to write them all from scratch. So it was a bit more attainable, but the same rule applies. Like, after a few days, you get up to it, then you finally get to 3,000, and then you can repeat it. And so it took, I would say it probably took a week to get to that number. And the same thing applies when I start a new project. The first day back at the writing phase, I'll be lucky if I get 1,000, 1,100 words down. And then over time, you'll get back into shape, and then you'll become more accustomed, and the flow will start to happen. And so that it is really training is the perfect word for it. Just like physical training, you get into shape and it starts to happen a little easier. But that said, like, I know there's plenty of writers, like Michael Connolly has been quoted as saying there's no word per day for him. If he just moves the story forward, even one sentence, that's enough for him of daily writing. The point is daily. And Elizabeth Gilbert has said some of the same things. Like, she doesn't put a big word per day on it. For her, it's like, if you can write 45 minutes a day, you'll have a book. It'll take a minute, but you'll get to having a book. So I just use that because, like you said, I was trained for that, and it helped me. But you don't have to do 2,000 words a day is good too. So is 1,500.
And the words for this one, well, they're slightly different just because this is fiction. A lot of what you've worked on before is more experience, memoir, ghostwriting, that kind of thing. Whereas this all, and you're writing those words, but these words are all coming fresh from you, if that makes sense. The difference in those two crafts, was that apparent in getting the words down? I don't know. Was this at all slightly trickier? How did that change?
I think fiction is a lot harder. It was a lot harder. So everything I've done before is reporting based. And so even ghostwriting is a form of reporting to me. And so you're interviewing people and you're getting their voice down, and then you're trying to write in their voice. And so that process is interesting. And that's the difference with ghostwriting and reportage. But it's all reporting. And this is like totally not that. And so that was the big change, like going from reporter to kind of this channel for this specific story. And I would say how the difficulty for me was kind of a bit of imposter syndrome. Was like, for the first, I'd say 3 drafts of this novel, maybe more, I was like, this sucks. Like, I can't do this. I'm failing at this. And I kept trying to find it and find the story. And it took probably 10 drafts before I showed anybody even a word of this book. And that's how long it took for me to get comfortable with, okay, I might have something here. And the book now that's coming out in December, that's like over 25 drafts have been done on that book. So like 25 separate passes to make it what it is. it took a long time for me to really see it as something of value. But I stuck with it because I believed in it so much and believed in the process and was interested in the process. But it was a painful process for the first year and a half, I would say.
Did you have to slightly change your tuning for what was good? You know, you're used to writing in one style so often, and although you must read a lot of fiction.
Yeah, I mean, I got an agent with a novel. So I had another novel prior to this. The first manuscript, book-length manuscript I wrote was a novel, but that one was kind of based on my life. And so it was like 10 years of my life squashed into one. So it was still kind of in that memoir-y space where I knew what had happened. And so I could play with it. This is also based on a true story and a story I reported. So I had some basis of reality that I could function from. It's also rooted in Southern California and the landscape. And that's something I know well because I worked in environmental restoration in Southern California. So I found my connection points that made it real. And I think that really helped. I think that really helped make it real for me. And then finding those kind of footholds allowed me to stay with it. I don't know if I answered your question directly, but that kind of came up for me as I was thinking. It was like, you got to find your kind of connection points to make it real, because I'm still very much a realist. And so I needed to find that. And I did in the landscape, and I did in the actual events that it's based on.
And did you have any help along the way to kind of draw you back into how fiction is written, and something slightly different from kind of reporter-based writing as you were going, just because this is still slightly afresh for you?
You know, I didn't. I had, like you said, I read a lot. So I read a lot. I've read a lot of fiction. Fiction is what made me want to become a writer. So it was like a first love. That's why I was so dedicated to getting this book out and to sharing it, because it's always been an aspiration of mine. And I love the narrative nonfiction stuff too. I like both. I like going back and forth. The writers that I admire the most are the ones that go back and forth. And so I think the help I got is just the inspiration from all the great writers that I've loved over the course of my life. That's kind of that was the help I got. And then once I got to the 10th draft, I shared it with my wife, April. And when she responded positively to it, I shared it with a couple other early readers. And then those reads kind of gave me some more assistance. But I didn't share it with other writers until much, much later, to be honest with you. So so I anybody who I shared it with, though, gave me feedback that I took on board. But that was a couple of years into the process.
Back with more from Adam in just a sec. Now, if you're enjoying the show with kind of a podcasting hero, really, a fantastic writer, if you've learned anything along the way that's helped you curate your day, maybe just little points that you'll action later on, maybe something you've heard, and I'll take that into 2026 and see how we deal with that. Well, you can support the show for that. There's a couple of ways. You can become a rolling backer. Every month, you can send a few dollars, pounds, whatever it is, my way. It goes an extraordinarily long way to helping us, to helping me bring you these chats with the biggest authors around as often as I can. For that Patreon pledge, you get bonus content, there is merch, there is even a way for your book to sponsor this show. I completely understand supporting the show every month isn't always doable. That's fine. You can make it a one-off, one and done, with a tip, a donation, whatever you like, on our Ko-Fi page. Whatever you can give, I'm so thankful for. And it goes a really long way. To find both of those ways, Patreon and Ko-Fi, use the link in the episode notes wherever you're listening. Let's get back to it with Adam Skolnick then, chatting about his new novel, American Tiger. We discuss how he balances the nature of always trying to be productive, which is a thing that a lot of podcasters focus on, I think. I know we do too, but I hope in a slightly different way. Anyway, how he focuses on that, and also dealing with creative burnout. Because it's not really something you can quantify, I don't think. Also, we talk about his character passes and the individual drafts a little bit more, and we get back to it, talking about the new novel and the first idea that he had for it in the world of freediving.
It was in 2005, and I was a reporter with the LA Weekly, and there was an escaped tiger in the suburbs around Los Angeles, and they couldn't find it. And so I went out and spent a day with the game wardens out there and reported the story. And I thought that I was done with it. It was one story. I filed it. And then the first time I realized it could be a book was in 2013. I was chatting with my agent. I was about to go cover a freediving competition in the Bahamas. I was trying to figure out what my next book project would be, because we had this novel that did not get published, did not get bought by the publishers. And so he was trying to help me think through the next project. And this came to mind. I said, what do you think about a story in this world? Because I'd been mulling it in my head a little bit. And he really, he liked the idea. And so at that moment, it really was born as a book.
And then quite openly, what comes next? I mean, we know that you have an outline, you like to structure when you've got this idea. And I know it ties in with themes about California and about the world. But when you've got that idea and then you're leaving your agents and you're going to start planning, what are you asking yourself? How are you putting together this plot?
Originally, I was keeping it very connected to what actually happened. And so I wanted it to be I was thinking very much in the nonfiction brain, just like you said, like that it took me a long time to detach from that. But I stuck with the facts. And so I was like doing everything I could to get my hand on any file related to this true case. And I wanted to build it kind of almost like a documentary, but then go ahead and have fun with the writing. And so I was doing all that, and I was collecting. I mean, it was so funny. At one point, I tried to get from the Department of Agriculture, who are the people that employ these federal trackers that come in to catch problem wildlife if the game wardens can't find them. And I was petitioning them for their files. And finally, like after a year or more of petitioning them, they sent me something that was so redacted, like all that was left on the page were like a handful of contractions. It was just like black lines. But I was doing all of that, trying to like get the material that I thought I needed. And then I was having trouble still writing. And then what set me free was like, I felt like, this thing took place in a town called Simi Valley. And I'm like, I don't know Simi Valley enough. Should I actually go and work there? Should I set up shop there 5 days a week? I don't know this place well. And then what happened for me was I realized it doesn't have to be Simi Valley. This is fiction. You can unplug from Simi Valley. You can create a fake Simi Valley. So I created a place called Alissaw Valley that's loosely based on Simi Valley. And once I did that and fully with 2 feet leapt into this fictional world, this fictional place, it opened up for me. Everything opened up.
Now, we spend a lot of time in this with Bell Tern, who is a 9-year-old girl. Unless I've done my research badly, you are not a 9-year-old girl. What did you like do to put yourself in her mind, in her place, to accurately tell her side of the story?
So Bell Tern is the first person to see the tiger. She sees it from a school bus window, and she is her dad is the game warden. It's a local game warden, and that's Jay Tern, and her mom's not in the picture. And so I talked to friends whose mother, like young girls who grew up without a mom. I read Motherless Daughters, which is a great book about that same thing. It's all about, from the point of view, it's nonfiction. It's women of different ages who grew up without their mom. When their mom left, their mom died, from various ages as well. And so that kind of put me in a mindset. And then beyond that, I just tried to think of my niece, who was 9 at the time that I started to actually put pages down. So I was looking at the world through her eyes as much as I could. And then my early readers, the first 2 early readers were women, my wife, April, my friend, Leah Barrett. And Leah is adopted. And so she talked about kind of fantasizing about her mother when when she, her birth mother, because she has a great mom, but her birth mother, who she didn't know for a long time and certainly didn't know at that age. And so that helped me. So their insights really helped me. So I'd say those were the main sources.
Now, just touching back on the difference between reporting writing and fiction writing, it's not just like how the story goes that changes. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe this is the question. How much were you thinking about the way that a sentence would be structured and the actual words that you were using? I would imagine writing the memoir about like a mammoth ultra runner would be written in a different style than writing this quite like ethereal work of fiction. How much did that run through your mind?
Not at all. I'm not an analytical writer. So I write with feel. So it's all organic to me. And that's not trying to evade your question. I know there's a lot of writers that do think that way. They think about structure. They think about how can I do something different and innovate here or there. I don't have that kind of analytical approach. Any analysis I do is in the outline phase. When I'm writing, I try to look at narrow down the blank space to a specific thing that I need to cover in this day's work. And then I let it flow from there. And so that's the truth. If it's ghostwriting with David Goggins, it's the truth when I'm writing a piece of journalism. And it was the truth with this. So there's not a lot of analysis coming from me. I'm not like that. It's much more an organic process for me, which is, I think, what keeps me interested in. And it's what makes it really hard, but also what makes it really rewarding is it is kind of like a dance in a way.
And 25 drafts, what was changing? And 10 drafts before you really showed anyone. What was changing in between those drafts?
Well, I condensed. So the first draft is like the big messy pile that you have to get done. And then I did 2 more where I just pared it down and tried to I took out a character here. I condensed 2 characters into 1 there. And then I took an approach that I'd read about other writers doing, which I think would be helpful for people to know. And that is like I did a character by character kind of phase. So I did the Bell draft. Every scene she's in, everything related to her was covered, but I didn't cover the other pages. Then I did a J draft. Then I did like a landscape draft. I did a tiger draft.
When you mean covering them, Adam, so you're looking through the chapters and every time Belle is like we're in her mindset or she's mentioned, you're just tweaking and working on those?
So I did a Bell pass where I only worked on stuff where she was in the scenes. And then I did a J pass. And then I did kind of grouped a few characters together that are maybe more minor characters and did a pass with all of them. And I even did a landscape pass where everything was just about the land. And so I think the ethereal sentences you might be referring to might have come during those phases because it's easier to see the through lines when you're just focused on each one of them separately. And so it was just kind of a shortcut I'd heard other writers use, and I wanted to try it, and it did help a lot.
I've chatted to 400 authors doing this, I think. I've never heard of that. Like how it must have been so helpful to put you in them, to follow the threads and to put you in the mindset and to just know these characters so much better because you are just looking at their story.
Absolutely, 100%. And you know what else is funny is so when I decided to create a fictional Alisal Valley, I sketched out a map on a big sheet of kind of that roller butcher paper. And I'm actually, even though Belle is an artist and Jay is a cartographer in this story, I am not very good at art, So, but I did what I could do and I sketched it all out. And then even up to one of the last kind of copy edited pass, I noticed that I did hire a cartographer to create a topographic map that's in the book. And even to the last with that map, I did another pass, just making sure everything in that map fits. And I had to make a couple slight adjustments just at the end. So it's interesting to be able to see how it all fits together and then all the callbacks that can come from that. When you do a Bell draft and then you do a J draft, you can create little callbacks that, from the beginning to the end that are harder to do when you're just going chapter by chapter, if that makes sense.
Oh, it absolutely does. And on the final draft, I know that it's never as kind of exciting as this because normally it's just, you're making sure words are spelled correctly. But how did you know after 25 runs at this that it was done?
I mean, I think by that point, you're looking at a publishing date and you're going through the last phases. I think that I felt it was done. I worked with an editor and we did everything we could together. And then I did a couple more passes without him and then went to copy edit. And so once we got into copy edit, we're just doing the little bits and pieces. It felt done once we got into copy edit, it felt that way. But even copy edit, there are a few things that I wanted to change. So, right, that was probably around the process though. Through copy edit is when it started to feel done.
So written about free diving and about open water swimming, and you mentioned what was it that you mentioned you were about to do another bit of writing on?
Wingsuit base jumping.
That was it. So these are like big concepts, and there are so many different like really exciting things out there. What does an idea or an adventure need to do to pique your interest to write about it properly?
Originally, it was like underreported stories because I've been like this outsider working in media now for 20 years, and the stories that are really well reported are typically stories that staff writers get, and so I was always looking at underreported stories, and so those underreported worlds are where I'm attracted, and it just so happens that competitive freediving was one of those. Wingsuit base jumping is one of those. But of course, I'm also connected to nature and excited by expanding our awareness and what we're all capable of and what it means to be alive. And so if you look back, again, it's not been analytical, but if you look back at my body of work from this novel through the adventure sports reporting, through Lonely Planet stuff, all the way to the beginning of my career, you notice that the thing that ties it all together is this perception or this idea that we all live in a small bubble and life is much bigger, and we can expand that bubble, and we can expand what we know, we can expand what we think we're capable of, we can expand our sense of self to other people, to other beings, to identify, if you really want to, all the way with, we are one of this incredible whole, and we're all in natural balance tied together in this web of life. And so that kind of idea of expanding what an individual thinks is real and for them and for the world has always been something I'm interested in. And I think competitive adventure sports and competitive freediving and wingsuit base jumping and all the stuff I've covered, and even this novel picks at that and tries to get to that and get people to have a larger sense of who they are.
And I think expanding from that really, and lastly, and this was a better question, I think, before I realised that you can write 3,000 words a day, but just go with it. So you've worked with David Goggins, famous like master of just being relentless and pushing himself to the nth limit and kind of never giving up, and also you pop up on Rich Roll's fantastic podcast, and kind of a lot of that podcasting world, and I guess with people like Rogan as well, is kind of, doing the best that you can, and it's almost like quantifiable, if that makes sense. With how do you think that marries up with more creative pursuits when perhaps work rate isn't always reflected in output? Like sometimes you can have a massive day at the laptop trying to write, and you might get out 5 words because you're just wrestling with a problem in your head. How I guess it's quite a tricky question. How do those two things marry up, do you think? Like our current trend to be the best that you can be, but also writing novels.
I think in a couple of ways. I think my instinct is to say, first of all, that I'm not really trying to optimize my lifestyle. I want to do the best I can and grow and learn. And so I'm not really one of those people that is trying to optimize. But I will say that a couple of things. One is, when someone's wrestling and they can't figure out and they can only get 5 words out, in my opinion, that's because, and I'll come back to your question, but this is part of it, is that they don't know what they want to write. And so why I outline is that I take that big white space and I narrow it down to white bricks with an idea. And those bricks, I'm writing each brick one at a time. The way it relates to David or to Rich or anybody who pursues endurance, ultra endurance sports or any sort of physical activity is each brick is like another step on that long road. And you know that you have to build something, you need one brick at a time. And so to me, that's what I think writing is. There's an artistic flair to it, but it's a craft. And crafts are different than art. Crafts can be built one brick at a time. It doesn't have to be divined in the heavens and channeled through you. If in my opinion, if the story has come to you, it is channeling through you. And the way to build that story, there's a million ways you can do it. For me, the easiest way is one brick at a time. And I think training for a big ultra race, taking on a big athletic obstacle or like some goal, the only way to get there is to train a little bit every day, do a little bit every day, build up from there, get better, get faster, get stronger. And I think the writing process is very similar. The way I approach it, it's very similar. You're right.
And that is it for this week's episode of Writer's Routine. Thank you so much to Adam Skolnick for coming on the show. An absolute joy. I love when I hear Adam and Rich on the Rich Roll podcast. So it's a real joy to get him on. That new novel is American Tiger. If you'd like to get a copy, use the link in the episode notes or wherever you're listening. It will take you over to our bookshop.org page. You can support the show on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Again, links are wherever you're listening. And I'd like to very quickly say thank you for listening and for all your support through 2025. This is the last episode of the year. I'm going to take just one more week off and then I will be back with a brand new guest on the podcast at the start of 2026. How have we got there? I don't think I want to know, really. Listen, have a brilliant new year and thank you for being there. We'll chat soon. Bye. This week's episode of Writer's Routine is sponsored by Faber Academy, whose flagship course is back. It's the Writing a Novel course that you can get onto in person if you're in the UK and even online if you're further afield. It's not just a course, it's a commitment to your craft. Faber Academy is a place where you can learn the essentials of novel writing like no other. Now, this podcast lets you hear from the best authors around. This course can help you become one yourself. It covers everything that you need to bring your novel to life. Character, story, structure, plotting, voice, dialogue, conflict, and so much more. Through the course, you'll hear from guest speakers, some of the biggest names in publishing, authors, editors, and it's designed to help you hone your craft and find direction. We've had so many authors on the show who cannot speak highly enough about the Faber Academy, and now is your chance to be one of them. At the end of the course, part of your work is sent out to agents across the UK, and you'll have the opportunity to pitch your novel to some of the biggest literary names around. There's daytime and evening courses in London and an online course too that you can take part in wherever you are. Now, you need to be quick to sign up. Deadlines start in early January. So to take part online, your application deadline is the 4th of January. That starts on the 19th. And then for the London courses, both evening and daytime, your deadline is Sunday, the 11th of January. So make the most of this chance. It's not just a course, it's a commitment to your craft. faberacademy.com/writing-a-novel. The link is in the episode notes wherever you're listening. faberacademy.com/writing-a-novel.